Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the City Council meeting for February 17th, 2022. We are probably going to have a delayed invocation tonight. Our pastor is caught in traffic. Spring break is here. So we'll get a delayed blessing in just a moment. If anyone wants to speak to any items tonight, if you could fill out a comment card, you can find them up here by the city clerk. We would appreciate you doing that. At this time, I'd ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to introduce the dais. On my far right is City Manager Jennings.
Good evening.
Vice Mayor Hamilton.
Good evening.
Councilmember Albritton.
Good evening.
Councilmember Beckman.
Good evening.
Councilmember Bucker.
Good evening.
And our city attorney for tonight, Mr. Kohler.
Good evening.
Pinch hitting for Mr. Margolis, who should be back at our next meeting. We're going to start out with some service awards. If you could come forward when I call your name. First, Ivan Dimitrov of Engineering for 5 years of service. Congratulations, Ivan. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. Next, for 5 years of service from the engineering department, Jeremy Brown.
Congratulations. But you don't get to go home yet. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Jeremy. Thank you for all you do. Next, for 15 years of service from engineering, a big night for engineering, Sarah Kessler.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Sarah.
Thank
Thanks
you so
for
much.
everything you do.
Congratulations.
Next, we have our bi-monthly team award for January, February of 2022. If I could have Sebastian Dembick, Eric Holmes, Corey Garricott, Leonard Cox, Dan McGinnis, Aaron Cowan, and Jason Gray come forward.
Our on-call water distribution operator received notice from dispatch that there was a leak at 525 North Betty Lane, Clearwater Country Club golf course. Our operator responded and isolated the leak. Crews returned on Monday to make further repairs. As repairs began on Monday, further exploration revealed that a 30-inch reclaimed water main was leaking, the largest reclaimed main leak that many tenured water distribution operators had seen in the city to date. Our team completed a total shutdown and began preparing the site to make the necessary repairs. This began with one of our most experienced heavy equipment operators placing safety first by excavating the site to ensure proper sloping of the trench for the team to enter and begin repairs. Once this was complete, crews spent days cleaning and preparing the pipe for repairs. The repair involved installing a new section of pipe where fittings weighing over 200 pounds each had to be installed. To add to that challenge of mobilizing equipment and staff, the leak was in a remote section of the golf course where there was not established roads. The obstacles did not stop Milton Bostic, Sebastian Dembick, Eric Holmes, Corey Garapop, Leonard Cox, Dan McGinnis, Aaron Cowan, and Jason Gray from working tirelessly for days in humid conditions. The team made the most of the situation and embraced the challenge as an exciting new learning experience. Their ability to work together and maintain a positive attitude made the repair a success. The city now has a repaired 30-inch reclaimed water main, and the residents and businesses can utilize the service again. This is great teamwork. Thank you so much.
Great job, great job.
Thank you very much.
Thanks as always.
Was it exciting and
Great
fun?
job. It was. I can say
Could
we
you
did it.
distribute
Great
those?
job. Yes.
I would appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Really
Thank you very
appreciate it.
much.
Congratulations. Rich, do you have anything to add?
No, I just want to shake their hand.
Okay, very good. Well, next, if I could have Sue Bedry from the Newspaper and Education Development Specialist at the Tampa Bay Times come forward for our Newspaper and Education Week. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Whereas research tells us that the best way to help children discover the joy of reading and become lifelong readers is to involve them early and often. And whereas helping a child learn and love to read improves student chances of success in school and beyond. And whereas research shows that students who learn using the newspaper as an educational resource are more likely to become lifelong readers and informed and engaged citizens. And whereas Newspaper and Education is an international program that encourages the use of the daily newspaper as a living textbook for students from primary through adult education levels. And whereas for more than 40 years, the Tampa Bay Times Newspaper and Education program has served educators, students, and families by providing classroom newspapers, companion materials, and instructional support. And whereas Newspaper and Education Week is commemorated and celebrated annually during the first full school week in March. Now therefore, I, Frank V. Hibbard, Mayor of the City of Clearwater, Florida, on behalf of the Clearwater City Council, do hereby proclaim March 7th through the 11th, 2022, to be Newspaper and Education Week in Clearwater.
Thank you so much for supporting and recognizing our efforts to increase the literacy of our students.
And how can people help? Usually on their bill every year, they can.
They can. Subscribers can contribute through their newspaper bill. They can add $2. It adds up like you wouldn't believe. And people can also go to our website, which is tampabay.com/NIE, and they can sponsor a classroom. So they can actually sponsor the newspapers that are delivered to the students.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Watch this rise right here. People trip. Thank you so much, Sue. Next, I would ask if there are any amendments to the minutes of the February 3rd, 2020 council meeting.
Move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. At this time, I want to open it up to citizens to be heard. If there are any citizens in the audience that would like to speak to items that are not on the agenda, you can find agendas off to my far right as you enter the chambers. We ask that you fill out a comment card, state your name for the record, and respectfully ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Blaine Enderle, Blaine with no E. I've lived here for over 35 years, mostly on Hercules Avenue. I was the first person to have solar power in Clearwater. I was on your Green Print Steering Committee. I was a volunteer police officer in Crest Lake Park, Sand Key, and Clearwater Beach. I was a crossing guard at Kings Highway. as a volunteer police officer at Crest Lake Park when there was a homeless problem. The bathroom became extremely political at the time. Me thinking I'm a professional in the trenches for the city, I'll tell what the hell's going on. I'm a firm believer of free speech. Voicing my opinion got me fired for breaking the ethics policy. I said I was a volunteer. That's a no-no. I can only give my opinion as a citizen, not ever as a volunteer police officer. I went through an hour-long class on ethics in the police department. Now, 15 years later, I'm working again in the police department as a crossing guard. All last year, I brought up our safety cones are horrible, and that's a good word. A new year, probably new cones. Wrong. My supervisor told me to, all of my supervisors told me to shut up about the safety cones. So much for saying something. See something, say something. Have you ever seen Popeye when he says, I've had enough. I can't take it no more. I'm going to take the spinach. I had one of those moments. I wrote Mr. Jennings' office a private citizen complaint about safety cones. Absolutely nothing about crossing guards. My boss came to my post and said he read my email to Mr. Jennings. I asked how. It's a private email between me and Mr. Jennings. He told me the chief of police and 6 underneath him are pissed. Even though I wrote the letter identical to my ethics training for freedom of speech taught to me by the police, by my First Amendment rights, the police came and took my job away from me. In the YouTube video, Police Chief Slaughter stated he protects everybody's freedom of speech, no matter what they say. I swore under oath too, with all due respect to the Chief of Police Slaughter, which I still love, and all the people underneath him. That is not true. Mr. Jennings, what happens when the chief and 6 people underneath him break your ethics policy? I said I was a crossing guard. I said I was a volunteer and I got fired. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Mr. Underley. Anyone else for citizens to be heard?
Evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Norm.
Norm Bild, longtime veterans advocate, which translated, I'm an old guy. I only have 3 minutes or less now. There's been a new development, and I think more or less just the mayor and I would know about it in regards to the Bull Simons Award. That's given a Special Operations Command. And I met with the mayor alone not too long ago, and I don't think even he's aware of it. He's the only mayor in the area that's ever attended the Bull Simons Award. And this one definitely is a little personal in a very good way, because the awardee is my good friend, retired Sergeant Major Tyrone Adderley, who received Distinguished Service Cross, one below from the Medal of Honor, from President Nixon, along with Bull Simons, and most of the awardees of the Bull Simons Award didn't even know the Bull, but he served under the Bull on the rescue attempt to get our POWs out of North Vietnam at Son Tay. General Manna was also there, but unfortunately he passed away about a year ago this week. So that's a lot to give to people unless you kind of understand the background of the award and how I want to bring it to Clearwater instead of having it to Tampa. But if you Google Norm Bild Air Force Times, and what I'm going to try to do is next week I'm going to Hurlburt Field where the Son-Tay Raiders trained, the Doolittle Raiders trained, the second mission to get the hostages out of Iran were trained. We're having a seminar there with Lieutenant General Slife, he's the AFSOC commander, and some others, the group commander from the Special Forces, who's the command of the Bull Simons camp there, and most of all, Chief Smith, who is the senior enlist advisor for General Clark at SOCOM. Because one of the problems with this nasty thing with COVID, it gets in the way of a lot of things, and a hurricane. I worked with Micah, we were going to have you at the 9/11 briefing, and then the hurricane got in the way, and Mr. Jennings, and then COVID got in the way, and the thing is, if you have a private enterprise, which would be me, and be a much smaller scale, you have a little more control because you can't be ordered by the Secretary of Defense as a retiree. And so I would like to move it to Clearwater, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk to him next week. Who knows what happens? Who knows what the future is? Safety first as far as COVID. And in 2 weeks, I'll come back with a back briefing. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Norm. Anyone else for citizens to be heard?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Want to talk to you a little bit about two things. One, Senate Bill 524. It's the election bill that's going on up in Tallahassee. And one thing it does is it prohibits the use of ranked choice voting. Now, you folks had the wisdom of saying, let's maybe consider that. And I thank you for that. I thought that was a good idea. The bill lists the reason for getting rid of ranked choice voting. And the wording is statutorily required audits and current and authorized voting systems may not accommodate the use of ranked choice voting in the state. So it may rain tomorrow, but that's not the basis for making a policy decision in the state. I've been talking to Senator Hooper about this, but quite frankly, I think if you folks would contact them, you might have a little bit more weight. Otherwise, I thank you for the candidate forums that the city sponsored. I'd like to express my appreciation to Al Rashal. I think he did a great job. As League of Women Voters President for North Pinellas, I'd like to remind voters that they can vote by mail, and it's real easy. All they have to do is go to votepinellas.com to request a ballot. It'll be sent to your home address. It doesn't require a postage stamp. You just have to send it back in about a week in advance to make sure it gets there. But just to make sure that it got there, you can go to the Vote Pinellas website and find your ballot and whether it's there or not. So I hope everybody votes in this upcoming election. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council.
So do we. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else for citizens to be heard?
Evening, my name is Mike Reardon. I live in Clearwater. I want to talk about the Phillies, so I kind of want to look at you. I brought this up before, I don't know when, it's COVID, but I think we should sell the stadium and all its assets and everything to the Phillies. They're a $2.13 billion organization. Sell it all to them, use that money for the large extra $30 million that Imagine Clearwater is costing us from the original plans. Or they can rent it for 2 months. And then we can use that stadium for all kinds of events. We could expand all kinds of things. The softball we need, it's big around here. Bring in the Little League, Pony League, or whatever they call it when they're no longer 12 or 13. That stadium, we have, as citizens of on our payroll, our employees from Clearwater are working there on a regular basis. Every financial study that's come out is all over the place. One was the eyeball test. And then there was one, it was like 40, and all this stuff, all this financial income. What if that stadium was a year-round profit center? It is usually a ghost town costing the city a fortune, and we're dumping a whole lot of money into it right now. We got $6 million taken out of the Sand Key Reserve Bridge. We're asking $40 million from bed tax. We're not going to get anywhere near $40 million in bed tax. That's a pipe dream unless it's dramatically changed. And I don't think you really got it if you hadn't had COVID. So we need to give them right of first refusal to buy the thing, rent it year-round at fair market value, rent it year-round, and if they want Clearwater employees over there working on it, they're going to pay Clearwater for that time. They should just hire their own people. Probably a lot of people retire and go right over there. They already know the job. It is ridiculous It is a pipe dream for anyone to think that having a Major League Baseball team in Florida now is anything like it was in the 60s or 70s. And I don't care if it's a marriage and it gets divorced. I wouldn't mind seeing another organization come down here and take over. I'm tired of it. The Phillies, so what? You bring in another team, now you're getting more people coming that maybe don't come here on a regular basis. The Phillies are beholden to us. It's still one of the best ballparks around. We spent like, what, 15 or $34 million to build it? And now they want a $76 million facelift. Apartments for their 16-year-olds coming from other countries that don't speak English yet, while they're grooming them in a year-round program. Sell them the whole thing. Make it a year-round profit center or sell it for what it's worth, fair market value. It's ridiculous to think that they want us to give them $67 million. They bought that program. The Phillies were like $180 million when they bought them in the 80s. Now they're $2.1 or $3 billion. I'm tired of seeing large for-profit organizations make money, and we need the money because this park is getting a little pricey. And the park's going to cost us $2 million a year if everything goes right in maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reardon. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Michael Fatridis. I live here in Clearwater. I just have a few things to talk about. One thing is thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last time we were talking about the Community Development Board, and it seems like you were accused of stacking the deck with engineers and architects and people who are professionals at their crafts. And I just want to say thank you for sticking up for competency and not just checking a box that says, oh, this little cultural box, this is good, no, we need competency. And I say that because I come from a place that threw competency out the window. Went out the window, and we checked all the other boxes that didn't matter at all. And the whole city went to pot. It was bad. And this is a great place. This is a great place to live. It's a great place to have a family. And when you kick out competency, you kick out a lot of good things. A lot of good people leave. A lot of bad people move in. And you have bars on all your windows. And it's a bad spot. Last thing I want to say, and I'm a new guy, I've just moved here less than a year ago, so feel free to say no to this, and I understand that there's a lot of stuff going on, but I'm noticing a lot of parallels, again, for where I came from. And I'm not a part of this fight. I don't have a leg in this fight at all. But there's a Scientology, non-Scientology thing going on here. I don't know. Don't no one shoot me, okay? I noticed that there's a lot of shooting going on, but there's a third party here sitting on the corner waiting for you guys to shoot it out and move in, and they're Marxist people. This is a real thing. I know it seems ridiculous. I know I sound like I'm McCarthy in the 50s here, but there are people waiting for you guys to shoot it all out and to expend all your ammo, and then they're going to waltz in once everyone gets fed up with it and no one comes to city council meetings anymore, and the real bad players come in that culturally shut down this place. And all I'm saying is just look out for that. Do your fighting with one another, do whatever you have to do, but there are people lurking in the corner waiting to take this beautiful city down to its knees. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Hello. My name is Robert Trulli. I live on 880 Mandalay Avenue. I moved up here a year ago. I had major operations done, so I got disabled, so I moved up here. Where I reside now, there's major mold in my room, so my family cannot come up. I won't allow anybody up, and I'm debating right now moving out. Back in the 8th month, it was leaking outside the shower onto the area that I do not own. They came up and they fixed it, but they did not fix the shower, so be it. I had to. It was all because of that. That's irrelevant. But the following month, the sink got clogged. So I asked them who to use. They told me there's a local plumbing contractor. He came over. He went 20 feet outside my unit and still didn't hit the area on their pipes that are all rusted now. So he tried everything he could do. They come up, the manager comes up, and she says, well, there's nothing they can do. I have to cut down the sheetrock and going that way, I'm not gonna cut down the sheet rock and go into the main line, no. So, another month goes by, I had another plumber come over, he went 30 feet and couldn't hit the line. So then I called the building department, very cooperative, and they came over, did an inspection on 12/3/21. He found all kinds of violations they had, so we sent them notice, they refused to sign for it. A whole month went by, they finally signed for it. Instead of making a repair, they sent me a bill for a month fees. So rather than pay a month, no dispute, I paid them for the entire year. This entire year is paid, I gave them a check for almost $8,000. That was a month ago, and they are not coming over, and they're not making the repair, and I have mowed now. So, I don't know the next step I would have to do here.
And we have your information.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you for coming out tonight. Good luck. Anyone else?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Marcia Reimer, and I live in Clearwater. I've lived in Clearwater, attended Clearwater High, so I'm old. Graduated in 1968, but I'm here. I have no complaints. I'm here just to make you aware, and perhaps someone who sees this on TV, of an awesome organization. I'm the director of the Bay Area Pregnancy Center. I've been serving there as the executive director for 14 years. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. I'm not here to ask for anything. Last year we served over 1,200 clients. Clients are young women with an unplanned pregnancy, married woman struggling, single mom. You do not have to be pregnant to use our services. We just ask that you have a child 5 or under. And we have 3 centers. Clearwater is on Drew Street across from the St. Pete College. I went to the wrong library this evening. And then we have one in the High Point Neighborhood Family Center in High Point, and the third one is in St. Pete, right in the middle of Leelman. We're right where we need to be to help families. So we're celebrating 37 years this year. In August, it'll be 37 years that we've been serving our community. We have a small food pantry. All of our services are free. We help with clothes, bottles, diapers, wipes, anything baby related, up to 5 years old. Last but not least, I want to share with you, that's what makes us unique. There are other pregnancy resource centers in our county. We are the only one that serve our families until baby reaches age 5. So we've got 5 years to help them, mentor them, educate. We believe education is the answer to break some of these cycles. So I brought some materials, if I'm allowed to leave them. I guess I'll leave them in the back.
You can leave them in the back.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcia.
All righty, take care.
Anyone else before I close citizens to be heard? All right, seeing none, no comments, Ms. Call? All right. Anyone from the public to remove any items from the consent agenda? Items 7.1 through 7.11. See no one from the audience, no one on the dais. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve agenda items 7.1 through 7.11.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 8.1.
Approve a zoning atlas amendment for property located at 806 Turner Street and pass ordinance 9515-22 on first reading.
Ordinance number 9519-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by zoning certain real property located on the north side of Turner Street, approximately 180 feet east of South Myrtle Avenue, whose post office address is 806 Turner Street, Clearwater, Florida 33756, from Office O to Medium Density Residential MDR, providing an effective date.
Ms. Clayton?
I'm taken aback. Gina Clayton, Planning and Development. This application involves a vacant parcel that's about .27 acres. It's located on the north side of Turner Street, east of Myrtle Avenue. It has a future land use designation of residential office general, and it's zoned office. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to medium-density residential, which is consistent with the underlying future land use designation. And their plans are to build a home on this site. There used to be two homes previously. The rezoning is consistent with the area, and the CDB recommended approval at their January meeting.
Any questions for Ms. Clayton? Anyone from the public speak to item 8.1? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 8.1.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 9.1.
Approve the request.
Are we doing it this week or not?
Well, we've already instituted the rule change, so now it's one motion.
Okay.
9.1, approve the request from the owner of property address 2772 Westchester Drive, North Clearwater, to vacate a portion of the 5-foot wide platted drainage and utility easement and pass ordinance 9530-22 on first reading.
Good evening. Elliot Schobring, the Engineering Assistant Director.
I'll read the title.
I'm sorry.
Ordinance number 9530-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, vacating a portion of a 5 feet wide platted drainage and utility easement located on Lot 76, Westchester of Countryside, according to the map or plat thereof as recorded in Plat Book 70, page 44, Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, providing an effective date.
Good evening. I'll start again. This is a homeowner's building an addition onto his house, and there's a easement on the side that the city is not using. We don't have any utilities there, and he would like to put some air conditioning equipment and other utilities there, so we are good with vacating that. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Anyone from the public to speak to item 9.1?
Move to approve item 9.1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 10.1.
Ordinance number 9527-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, vacating 12 feet of a platted drainage and utility easement located on Lot 52, Cypress Bend of Countryside Unit 1, according to the plat thereof as recorded in Plat Book 76, page 10, of Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, providing an effective date.
Any questions for staff on item 10.1? Anyone from the public to speak to item 10.1? Do I have a motion?
Am I approving 10.1 or
You're approving
Adopting the ordinance.
the item and adopting the ordinance.
Okay,
So
approve.
All one
all
motion.
in one. So folks, we changed the rules recently. And so normally we used to approve the actual item first, which is on the agenda. And then we read the entire ordinance after that and approved the ordinance. Both of those, according to Mr. Margolis, our new city attorney, can be done in one foul swoop. So that is the change that we have made. Always will be an opportunity for the public to speak, but you won't be speaking on two items under one umbrella. So,
Move approval of agenda item 10.1.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 11.1.
Request FDOT to limit safety concerns on Drew Street by lowering the speed limit on Drew Street from Saturn to Myrtle Avenues and adopt resolution 22-07.
Resolution number 22-07, a resolution of the City of Clearwater, Florida, recognizing that a certain portion of Drew Street in Clearwater is within Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT jurisdiction, recognizing certain safety concerns within said portion of Drew Street, hereby requesting FDOT take appropriate action to resolve such safety concerns as more particularly described herein, providing an effective date.
This is to further communicate to FDOT that we have concerns about the speed and the vehicular crashes, and hopefully improve the residents' request to improve their neighborhood and their quality of life. The section in subject is from Drew Street to the east boundary of Saturn Avenue and Myrtle Avenue. Any questions?
Any questions? Anyone from the public to speak to this item?
My name is Mike Reardon. I've been trying to get the city to write a letter. I'm not really crazy about this resolution. It has a lot of mistakes. It doesn't even have the right start date of construction. It doesn't have any history. I didn't like hearing people talk about, oh, we were listening to the citizens on Monday's meeting and we're doing something. Citizens have been complaining and asking the city council for a long time, or members of the staff. I've been involved in this project since 17, but I have complained about it since 04 when my wife was rear-ended with my son at trying to make a left on Betty. So don't sit up here and go, oh, look, we're listening to the citizens and we're doing something. Because the reason this road is happening is because in 16 members of Skycrest went to Fort Pinellas and they got the grant. If Fort Pinellas didn't exist the way it does, this road would be getting nothing. The city would be doing nothing because it hasn't done anything for 40 plus years. If this road belonged to Clearwater, it sure as hell would not be getting the streetscape that it needs. The speed limit should be 30. And I heard people, the chief say that he heard data from engineering that 95% of the cars are in compliance. That's a crock. There's no way in the world 95% of the cars are doing 40 or under. I drive it every day at 40 and they stack up behind you like you're doing 55 on I-4. Two speed studies have 50% of the cars doing 53 and 57, on the, especially coming over Highland on downhill grade by Kimley Horn and FDOT. It should be 30. It's going to be probably 30 when the street safe goes through, and nothing is going to stop it. The $300,000 plus you're spending to examine all the streets around Clearwater, you have your new guy Omar and Tara Kivett all geared up doing. It's not going to happen. This is going to happen. And the construction is supposed to start in 24. Not sure what month. And the sidewalk's been moved to May by the contractor's request, but they're going to do it in 2 weeks, the 4.5 blocks. Yeah, we had 4.5 blocks with no sidewalks, Mr. Jennings, for over 40 years on Drew Street. I'm so disgusted. I called twice Margolis's office, and I have the recording. His secretary called me back. I offered to come in and go over some of the history and some other specifics on this road before they wrote anything up, not tell them how to write it, and bring Whit Blanton from Fort Pinellas, who offered to come and talk about it. You all haven't even signed the Safe Streets Pinellas agreement. The only major city around hasn't signed on to Safe Streets Pinellas. And all it is saying, hey, we're going to try to work as a team conjunctively with Fort Pinellas and FDOT. Omar is getting data out the yin-yang from Brian Schroyer and other people at FDOT. Most of the stuff you're paying $300,000 for from some consultant you could get from Fort Pinellas because they've already done it. Someone needs to tell Margolis when he gets a call, he should take the call. Something got lost in translation. Because I have the recording. I was told to go talk to a council member.
Thank you, Mr. Reardon. Anyone else to speak to this item? All right. Any questions from council? Councilmember Beckman.
So, Mr. Reardon said the speed should be reduced to 30. Do we have the option to request that it be reduced to 30, or are we requesting it to be the lowest speed that's FDOT approved or something?
We can request any speed. I will warn you that, we can do 30. I tried to temper expectations on Monday. Having sat on the MPO for years, speed limits, especially on FDOT roads, are very prescriptive, and they have criteria that they follow, very similar to what they do with stoplights. I was involved in a lot of stoplights throughout Pinellas County, probably one of the most memorable up on McMullen Booth Road, north of Tarpon Ave. And it's just very difficult to get FDOT to break out of what their formulas are for speeds. We can certainly lower it to 30. I think the odds of that are literally slim to none. Mr. Albritton represent us now on the MPO, or Forward Pinellas, and has probably dealt with a lot of the different stoplights and speeds
DOT.
throughout the entire county. And, you know, I wish, Omar, do you want to come up and speak to that process?
Omar Talla, City Traffic Engineer, Manager. One thing about reducing too much the traffic speed limit is potentially be the differential in speed. And so what we may be doing is we may have that condition, and then that condition can provoke more accidents. So I would recommend that we implement 35, push for that, and if there is that calmer traffic movement, then we can progress furthermore. So there are traffic calming techniques. Some of them are non-intrusive, and some of them are intrusive. Non-intrusive could potentially be coordination of signal timing, so it calms down at a certain progressive speed, and more of warning the public with deploying road marking strategies, narrow lanes, slow down, emphasizing the speed, just to make the public aware that this is a kind of an abnormal section of the road, so that they become more conscientious of the fact. So my recommendation at this point in time is to go with the 35, and I will, as noted earlier in the meeting on Monday, to follow it up with FDOT and see how effective we can and we will do a follow-up, and after study, before study and after study, just to see how effective we are.
And then the comment about the resolution needing some kind of historical perspective, that's not the norm for a resolution to give a historical perspective, or is it?
I mean, I think it may depend, but it depends on who drafts it, but, I mean, I've reviewed it, it looks, meets my approval.
Other questions or comments?
No, I would agree that I think 30 miles an hour is a bridge too far for what the road is right now. I mean, FDOT may take this resolution and, yeah, thanks, and ignore it anyways. But I think 35 is a very reasonable request, and hopefully they will give it due consideration.
I agree.
Councilmember Punker.
I certainly understand the frustration of Mr. Reardon and all the folks who live in the neighborhood. I have to confess that I used to speed down that road as everyone else does, until I got up here and started to hear about all the accidents and all of the problems that it's created for that neighborhood. Now I make sure that I'm respecting them, but not everyone can wait until they get here to realize, oh, there are ramifications for the stuff that we do. When this was brought to us a while ago, my first thought, well, why don't we just lower it to 30? And then I found out, well, we can't, because that's not our road to set. I would much rather it be 30, because that means that people will go 40. If we say 35, people will go 45. That's guaranteed. But I'm not sure that us asking for 30 is going to have much of an impact. as opposed to 35. Personally, I prefer that we ask for 30.
I have a motion.
Motion to approve agenda item 11.1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 11.2.
Appoint 3 members to the Community Development Board with terms expired February 28, 2026. Council members, since the last council meeting, staff has received 5 additional applicants for your consideration. So I'm going to go through I'm going to name all the individuals who have submitted applications. But before I go there, I will like to just state for what's included, the language that's included in the Community Development Code. And that is that the City Commission shall seek a membership with diverse economic, social, and professional representation and shall include members qualified and experienced in the fields of architecture, planning, landscape architecture, engineering, construction, planning, and land use law, and real estate. The individuals that have submitted applications are Andrew Caudell, a general contractor, Brenda Dallas Griffith in real estate, David J. in real estate, William Johnson, a former council member and project manager, Travis Norton, Community Relations, Nicholas West, a political analyst, Andrew Winkler, a financial advisor, Bruce Rector, a corporate general counsel, Michael Engelman, an engineer, Andrew Hupp, real estate developer, construction firm owner, Paul Buffard, EPA special agent, criminal investigator, retired, Justin Perino, commercial construction management, and Aubrey Hodricourt, and she's an engineer, but she's also a Clearwater engineer of record.
Just a question on the last. Ms. Hardicourt seems very qualified, but Mr. Kohler, how will that affect their firm by her being on the CDB?
Well, I mean, we currently, I think, Brian Barker, if I'm not mistaken,
Who's with Dual?
he the former member?
Yes,
So-
he's one of the ones resigning. So he's with Dual and Associates.
Correct.
And a former employee of the city.
I don't know how many of their matters would come before the Community Development Board.
Okay.
But it potentially could be an issue, but we have had an EOR before.
Okay. Questions?
I don't have a question as much as we've heard a lot of different things. We've heard, we've gotten letters and whatnot. And the Community Development Board is more than an advisory board. Now, a lot of things that come before them, they approve, then progress to us for final approval on an item. However, there are some items that when the CDB makes a determination and a ruling, that's the final ruling. It does not come to us. So, given that, and being that they're quasi-judicial, I mean, you want people sitting on that panel, I want people sitting on that panel that understand our code, understand our, all the regulations, understand construction, understand zoning, and are going to make a determination as they are required based on the rule of law, not based on, well, I just don't like it, I don't like the way it looks, or something like that. That's no thought process that should ever come into being for a community development board vote. And that being said, I look at the 3 people that are coming off, and they're.
Let me see if there's anybody that wants to speak from the.
Okay.
Anyone from the public to speak to this item?
Dinner. Mike Reardon. Here's where I am on the CDB, and a lot of people have told me this. The issues with the CDB, there's all this stuff about, they got to be experts and read all this stuff and know all this stuff. And I guarantee you, you get all these people up there, they're all professionals in their field, but none of them are experts in all the different codes, just like the 6 years I was on the code board. The staff comes up, they present the code, you have your packet, you read what the code says, your job is to interpret the code. You can't change the code, David mentioned you don't go up there and interpret the code. But the CDB has this flexibility, interpretation, change of use. The best one, the most recent one that's been brought up is the storage unit on Duncan. The staff came up and recommended against it, and it still got voted for. There should be homes there. Now there's a retention pond next to that big, it is a big, beautiful building, but it's not in the right location in a residential neighborhood. Down here on Edgewater, that could have been handled better. Most people feel like the citizens find out about everything at the 11th hour. All the cards are stacked in their flavor, and there was conversations about an ombudsman, and David Lelandson explained a lot more of the headaches with that, but there should be a variation of that. The citizens should know what's going on. Anytime there's flexibility, change of use, that's when you get people piled in here, you get people stacked up complaining and everything else. Most of that stuff is pretty dry. The staff is making sure all the items meet the code. The best people to interpret the code and enforce the code are the staff we have in municipal services, and then all the representatives of the developers. It's not this group of people sitting up here know-it-alls. That's why you need community representation. You don't need a house full of experts, because the only key issues are we going to give a flexible, and I agree with David, we don't want to say there's zero flexibility, because you might have something in place, you go, well, geez, if we had a little flexibility, this other item would be better. And you're always going to have people, this is great, this is terrible. I know Mayor Creticos told a number of people on the beach, you're not guaranteed a view, a vista or whatever, and something's going up. A lot of times you're going to have a lot of people ticked off and a lot of people happy. But it seems like to me, when these key issues come up, it's more large number of residents and citizens unhappy, and a handful of developers who don't even live here, whose corporations aren't even here. Ocean Properties, I mean, beautiful buildings, but none of them live here except for their staff and employees. They're in New Hampshire and Jupiter Beach or something, I think, 2 headquarters. You need citizens' representation. The city's staff is making sure it meets code. The people who are building the product make sure it meets code. It's this change of use, flexibility, all that stuff. And that's where citizens are getting the shaft. And they're coming to the dance too late. And they don't have the horsepower, the money, the representation. You can't even have, people call me, they can't even find an attorney, because all the attorneys work for the developers.
Thank you, Mr. Reardon.
We can do a lot better.
Hi, everybody. My name is Glenna Wentworth. I live on Hearn Boulevard in Clearwater. I just want to add to Mr. Reardon's comments, Honorable Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight concerning the selection of 3 CDB members. As you know, I'm a member of the Clearwater Neighborhoods Coalition, an HOA president, and a member of the Environmental Advisory Board. I'd like to advocate for more diversity on the CDB, especially regarding neighborhoods and the environment. To my knowledge, there's no one on the CDB who has a breadth of knowledge of our neighborhoods, the issues they face, and the impact the CDB decisions have on them. There's also no one with knowledge of environmental issues and the impact that these decisions have on the environment. And I believe that the environment should be taken into consideration in every decision made by the CDB. Regarding neighborhoods, I would recommend Bill Johnson for the CDB. As a member of the Clearwater Neighborhood Coalition, Bill has a depth of knowledge of our neighborhoods and their issues. There are other reasons to recommend him, including his experience as a former city council member. As also an aside, he has a fair understanding of environmental issues. In addition, regarding the environment, I would recommend Paul Buffard. I don't know him personally, but I know of him as he was being consulted in some water issues in my neighborhood a couple of years ago. His technical, I also know that he has a background in environmental law and that he worked for the EPA. His technical and legal experience, I believe, would complement and diversify the CDB. I think both of these individuals would complement and diversify the CDB in a way that's truly needed. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Wentworth. Anyone else from the public to speak to this item?
Good evening, Council and City Manager, and Mr. Kohler representing our City Attorney. I'm Chris Michaelek, live in Clearwater Point, 855 Bayway Boulevard. And first of all, I want to again thank you for listening to me. I know each of you received a copy of the thing you have in front of you, except what's been added to this copy are stars. And the 3-starred candidates that are listed there are the candidates who I believe should be serving on the CDB. I want to thank you for the opportunity to learn in the last 3 years. 3 years ago, our maintenance tech came up to me and said, Chris, there's a yellow sign in front of the chart house. What the heck is that about? I learned, they say as you age, you should learn a new language and you should learn a new instrument. And I have now learned CDB. I've learned all kinds of things about planning. I've learned about the municipal code. So thank you for keeping my brain going. Other things that I learned is that not only Clearwater Point was affected by decisions made by the CDB, also East Shore Drive, Island Estates, Skycrest, the people who live near Fairfield Inn, Edgewater Drive, all these communities have been affected, and their green, peaceful neighborhoods have been affected in a damaging way. I also learned that our municipal code is flawed. I think all of you are learning that now. I also learned that this word flexibility that is within the code, has been so manipulated and so used that it is always a subjective decision by our community development board members. Specifically, in the directive that says, under Beach by Design, the proposed development of the land will be in harmony, scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the adjacent properties. Character of the adjacent properties, very subjective. Finally, I also learned that the members of the CDB really dictate what's going to happen to our neighborhood. And that is why, as I wrote to you 2 weeks ago, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where I'm asking all of you to look at the definition of who should be on the CDB, number one, to look at the diversity, and also I agree with the people, the two of my citizens who were up here earlier, who talked about, yes, our staff, they're hired to review every plan, to give their expert opinion, so the people who serve on the CDB don't necessarily have to know every nook and cranny. They don't have to know every building thing. They can drive by, they can look at the property, but this is what we have our staff for. They are public servants, they serve us. And I remember hearing from our city manager, John Jennings, that he believes that's what we are in the service business. All of us are in the service business. So I'm asking you to carefully consider and nominate Mr. Buford, Mr. Engelman, and
Thank you,
Mr.
Ms.
Johnson.
McCullough.
Thank you.
Anyone else for citizens to be heard? Okay, I will close citizens to be heard. Any other questions before we have deliberation? I do want to make one comment before we do. There's been a lot of statements that, these people don't know our neighborhoods. All of them live in neighborhoods. All of them live in Clearwater. It's a requirement. Now, whether you think they know, first of all, I doubt that anyone knows what other people's knowledge is. So I take exception with that comment and the fact that, people don't care about neighborhoods, even though they live in them, for heaven's sakes. Everybody cares about their neighborhood at least, or their next door neighbor, or the activities that are going on. And the other thing I want to just make a comment on is that I don't think people are one-dimensional. I think they can have multiple dimensions, that they can care about neighborhoods, the environment, good design, following the quasi-judicial code, all at once. It's amazing. I know that we do that, or at least I have over the years when I served on the CDB, and only 2 people up here have ever done that. And I think have a little bit better knowledge than some who have never served on it. So I just can't let that pass without comment. So at this time, I'll shut up for a few minutes. Councilmember Beckman.
Well, I have a couple of comments. First of all, I appreciate residents who come out and voice their concerns. A couple of things that I've been thinking about this week after our Monday discussion is, so you served on the board and you're not a engineer or developer and don't have a particular skill that might fall into whatever was read. And I think others can as well. And the way I'm looking at it is, yes, as you said on Monday, the code book is this big, but when you're asked to interpret a question, a sticky question, or make a judgment about flexibility, you're not referencing 300 pages. You know, you're referencing 6 or 8 pages. I think anybody can handle 6 or 8 pages. And I also think that the CDB has their own attorney. So the members on the CDB, whether they're, you know, school teachers or nurses or engineers, can turn to the CDB attorney for any clarification, just like we can up here. When we have CDB decisions that come before us, I'm not an architect or an engineer. I don't have that background, but I'm certainly trusted to read and understand and ask clarifying questions of our city attorney to make a decision. And I think others who sit on the CDB can do that as well. I too would, you know, I tend to gravitate towards some of these green indicators from Chris Mikulak, and I do appreciate this extensive, you know, she went to the trouble to put in a graph form, you know, or spreadsheet kind of form. Matrix, thank you. You know, the applicants and their profession or employer and their skills and board service and all that stuff. So that's a nice visual, and I do appreciate that. I reached out to Paul Beaufort, who is the retired federal EPA agent, and so, you know, I feel confident with his knowledge of the environment and concern about the environment. I also feel very confident about Mr. Johnson in that I know that he has outstanding work ethic and does his due diligence. And I think when we're hearing concern from residents and neighbors, multiple neighborhoods, and representatives from the CNC, that we need to respond to that. And if, you know, if Mr. Johnson can be that liaison between a neighborhood's representative organization and the CDB, I think that might go a long way to quelling some of those concerns. And so, you know, I just wanted to make that point. And, you know, yeah, people live throughout Clearwater and can care about neighborhoods and sit on that board. But, you know, one thing I think of is, you know, it would be like, well, I don't want to, never mind. I just think when we have flexibility and you have a number of people sitting on a board who work in the development profession, I would be a little suspect that they would err in favor of developers.
Okay, Ms. Clayton, I do have one last question, and you may not have this answer, so. Sorry. How many cases come before the CDB roughly per year?
Oh, gosh. I would say before the CDB, probably maybe 35, 40 max.
Okay.
In that realm. We do a lot, we approve a lot more at the staff level.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I know that there are really 3 projects that people point to every single time, which frankly I wasn't around for, but I know of at least 3. Certainly the Edgewater, the storage unit that was on commercial property, by the way, was not on residential property, just for clarification, whether it would be houses, that zoning would have had to have changed, behind Thornton's. And then some people raise, obviously, the chart house out on the beach. So those are the 3 I hear the most about. I hear about the storage out on 19 and Countryside and the one on Seville as well. But the 3 that I hear about the most are chart house, Edgewater, and the storage behind Thornton's. So my point is, we keep pointing at those as good examples of bad examples. But if we're doing 35 to 40 cases a year, and those have come over the last 2 years, I think, actually it's longer than that, it's been 4 years probably since the first of those, and we point to 3, I don't know that there's that many cases that are that egregious. And I think the chart house went through 2 different appeals, which the judge upheld. So I know Ms. Gillette doesn't like that, but it did go, I think, for hearings twice. Again, I wasn't here for it, but I know that it got appealed twice. So I get a little bit uncomfortable when we keep talking about the same cases over and over and say everything's broken. I don't think it is. I think there's always going to be cases that people aren't going to like. But I'm going to start pointing out things more and more like this, that I think people just keep playing that record, and, you know, and it creates really a false narrative is what it is. So, Councilmember Albrecht.
Yeah, I wanted to just say a couple of things on this, since I also served on the CDB. One of the things that staff brought up, and I think I was on CDB at the time, was they wanted to make the notice requirement out of the hands of staff and put it in the hands of the developers. And I'm like, no, that would be just terrible. You know, I think we owe it to everybody in our community when we're doing a project to let everybody know. I mean, typically notices get sent out, I think it's a 500-foot area around wherever, you know, a development's going to happen if it needs some kind of a land use change. And everybody has a chance to go and listen to what the changes are and speak. But I know this, that a lot of times, I know everybody has a busy plate, everybody's got their own lives they're worried about, sometimes they don't see the notice. And maybe I would recommend, and I'm not going to make it from the dais right now, but I would be up for talking about how we can make it a little more friendly for the neighborhood when we have, and all these things take place where you have commercial meeting residential. That's the only place we have these problems. And we don't have them all the time, but like the mayor just pointed out, 3 times in the last 3 or 4 years, and you know, we hear it over and over again. But I would be up and willing for a discussion, either one-on-ones or on the dais, about how we could improve the process. I don't think we need to change the CDB. I think we've got good people on there. And yes, you do have to know. You have to be familiar with land use and how things work in order to make your decisions. I mean, and you don't always agree with staff. I mean, as you know, it's brought up on the dais. I mean, sometimes staff will not recommend something, but yet the CDB will go over staff and say, we recommend this. And I don't know what the difference, how many times we disagree with staff, but I know one time I disagreed with staff, and Michael was the one that was saying that he wanted, and then that's the Walgreens down on Court Street, and staff was against that. And Mike, you can remember this because you were in that building. It's an old building. It looked like the third world country coming into our beaches. For years, 40 years it was like that. And I'm like, enough's enough. Let's build something nice that's here. No, that's not the best use. I go, but it's better than that thing.
I voted for it.
There you go, see? So not everything is a bad thing when you disagree with staff. I think it's worked out fine. And it may not be there for another 40 years. There may be some big development that comes in and buys them out. You don't know. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I would be up for maybe we could do a longer notice to go out so everybody can have more time to kind of wrap their brain around it. But that's something that I'm not bringing up on the dais now for approval. I think we need to have more discussion and talk about it.
Yeah, let's get down to picking some numbers,
Yeah.
unless there's other comments. Councilmember Bunker?
So there are only 3 situations that the public is concerned about or complained about. Why don't we nip that in the bud and have people who care about neighborhoods appointed to the board so there wouldn't be any? Make it 0. Shouldn't that be what we're aiming for? And we could do that simply by appointing some people who care, because we already have engineers and developers that are remaining on the board, don't we?
Again, I'm going to take exception with the fact that the other people that are candidates don't care.
I'm not saying that they don't care.
You just said it. Let's pick some people who care.
Well,
Which
let's
means that
some
other
people
people don't care.
Well, these are folks who have said, I'm concerned about the neighborhoods and environment. So Paul Buffard, and Michael Engelman, engineering and environmental concerns. Bill Johnson certainly is a detail guy, so if you need somebody who's going to be watching code like a hawk, there's your guy. So I think we could do better is all I'm saying. And showing people throughout the city that we are caring more about the neighborhoods and will do a better job, I think goes a long way.
Councilmember Beckman?
Can we divide the questions so we vote on each individually instead of paired up or in a group of 3?
We can.
I think that would be best.
That's fine.
Well, then I would make a motion to appoint Bill Johnson to the CDB.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Hey.
2-3. That fails. Someone else?
I make a motion to appoint Paul Buffard to the CDB.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
I would nominate Andy Caudell.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Aye.
4-1 with Councilmember Bunker in opposition. I'd like to see Mrs. Hydrocourt. Probably not pronouncing that right, but I can't make a motion, so. She's an engineer, we're losing an engineer.
I would nominate her.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Councilmember Beckman? Yeah, or nay?
Sorry.
That's okay. Just for Mrs. Call.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. I need a third.
I nominate David J.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Councilmember Albritton, did you vote? I didn't hear your voice.
Nay.
Okay, thank you.
I know we're losing an attorney, which he's done a marvelous job. I think Mr. Rector does a lot of real estate law with the company that he's with. I think he would be a good replacement.
And I'd agree with that, so I'll recommend him.
He already serves on the Parks and Rec Board as the chair of the Parks and Rec Board.
Yeah, I talked to him, and he said he is willing to step down from Parks and Rec if he was selected on this.
I'll second Mr. Rector.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
4-1, with Councilmember Beckman in opposition. All right, item 12.1.
Amend Section 2.036 Clearwater Code of Ordinances to add subsections relating to the duties of city attorney and pass ordinance 9553-22 on first reading.
Ordinance number 9553-22, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida relating to city administration, amending Section 2.036 of the Clearwater Code, providing for severability and an effective date. I brought forth this amendment on Monday, just wanted to go over it again. This will be amending Section 2.036 that discusses the duties of the city attorney. There are going to be 4 subsections that are going to be added. Number 6, it's going to be the duty of the city attorney to supervise the entire city attorney's office, including the attorneys and staff. The employees assigned to the city attorney's office should not be considered civil service employees. Subsection 7, the city attorney shall establish compensation for pay to all employees. Number 8 is with the exception of board appointments. The city attorney will review agenda items that go before council, the CRA, and the pension trustees. And number 9, the city attorney will review and approve invoices for outside legal counsel.
Any questions for Mr. Kohler? Anyone from the public speak to item 12.1?
Good evening. My name's John Patrick Estock, and I'm here. I'm a public policy student of Professor Crunchnobble's. And
Tell Jeff hello.
Pardon me?
Tell Jeff hello.
Sure. I had 2 issues with this. Both section 1, number 9. Does the council or the manager, I assume now, do they make payments? Will they retain that authority? It mentions invoices, but the actual payments, authorizing payment. Will the council or the manager, or however it's done now, I assume the council authorizes payments, like for outside legal counsel, will they still, does that change?
If I can interject, typically there would already be an agreement in place. This is for invoices pursuant to the agreement.
It's just invoices, not payments. Okay. The other thing was section 1 also, number 6. You're gonna, I believe there's 4 employees who are classified. Is that correct? The civil service, there are 2 paralegals, 2 legal assistants. I believe a lot in the civil service. I don't, I looked, it looks like there's 3 or 4 layers in that office, and those 4 are at the bottom of everybody else is like the city attorney or an assistant, but you have paralegals. I think they're worthy of civil service protection. Does the city have a civil service board?
Yes, they do.
Do they have any? Have they acted? There wasn't anything in the back documents online about. Do they have any authority to approve this or?
Well, the issue's different because the city attorney's office has always been separate from the office of the city manager.
Okay.
And that's through charter, and that's why. And again, this is dealing with the ordinance involving the city attorney as opposed to another ordinance that involves the city manager.
So the civil service board doesn't have any authority over the city attorney? Is that?
Well, the city attorney's office is separate.
Right. Okay.
A separate group of employees. This is what this ordinance will be doing.
Okay, because I guess like those classified, are they currently hired by the manager because they're civil service?
No, it's always been a practice that the attorneys in the city attorney's office are hired by the city attorney.
No, well, their staff, they're not attorneys, they're paralegals, the four of them. So they're currently hired by the attorney. I wasn't sure.
Our flow chart in our city is the city council sits as the board of directors, and then the city council has 2 employees. The city manager, who administrates everything other than the city's attorney's office. And the city attorney is the second employee of the city council.
Yeah, I would just, I think those should remain civil service. I don't know why there wasn't any explanation of why all of a sudden changed. And I know we have a new city attorney, but I just think for me, it's too much change, too much power, too quick. So I'd ask, other than that, I don't have a problem, it's all good. I guess, other than that, it's all that's going on, it just codifies it, right? Okay, so other than that, but I'd have to say no to that. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Anyone else to speak to this item? All right, any further questions? Do I have a motion?
Move approval of agenda item 12.1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 13.1, Councilmember Beckman on House Bill and Senate Bill 1024.
So I appreciate that the city staff drafted the letters, and I think that they are well done. There's been a little stalling, from my understanding of the bill this week. I wrote a letter asking that the state not take any action until we had a penetration of solar of about 10%. We're not even at 1% right now. And I think the biggest concern is that it makes it incredibly difficult for us to reach our Green Print 2.0 goals, as well as it'll affect it'll affect the solar industry and jobs in our state, in our community. And I think it works against a competitive market. So I like the letters. I would make a motion that we approve these letters and send them to Tallahassee.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Vice Mayor?
I don't have any real heartburn with sending the letters, but my understanding is the impetus behind some of this legislation coming forward is because other states who also have net metering and whatnot going on are starting, that have been doing it even longer than Florida, are starting to realize certain issues, and this is someone in Tallahassee's attempt to address it before it becomes too big of a problem. I don't know that we're to that point yet. I don't have a problem sending these letters, but I'm just, aware of my understanding of what the genesis for this legislation was.
So I promised all of you that I would get in touch with Duke, which I did. And the CEO put me in touch with one of their experts on this. First of all, Duke is not proposing this legislation. This is really FP&L, Florida Power and Light, that has proposed this. Ms. Satius wanted me to know and express that Duke is fully supporting solar and are doing enormous solar fields, of which the city of Clearwater is participating. And it is a way for people to participate themselves if they want. You can opt into Duke solar farms, which are extremely efficient because they're putting huge arrays up in counties where the land is inexpensive, comparatively speaking to Pinellas County, and you will actually get a rebate over time for getting into that. That's my only ad for Duke. So I was talking to this person who is an expert I have to tell you, it was a little overwhelming. But she said at some point, be it now or in the future, the rules within the state are going to have to be looked at because they were originally written in 2006, and they have drastically changed since more and more people are adopting solar. Currently, if the idea was that you would put enough solar on your house so that you would take care of all your needs. Some people are putting arrays on their houses that are far larger so that they can actually send power back to the grid. Currently, they are getting a retail price for that, but they aren't paying into the overall grid itself for storms, for putting up power poles, for maintenance of all the infrastructure. So I said, this is not her words, I said, and I don't want to offend Councilmember Beckman, but something that's also going to have to be looked at down the road, no pun intended, is currently electric vehicles are not paying any tax like those who have internal combustion engines through the gas tax to pay for our roads and other infrastructure. Well, when your EV car is going down to the road, it is still wearing on the infrastructure. And that's kind of how she equated, once I brought up that example. She did not use that example. But that somehow people have to pay back into the system. Because if we have storms where your house is still intact, but your solar array has been damaged to the point where it isn't providing power, then you're going to come back on the grid and start taking electricity from the power plants that are providing it. So she was not opposed to us sending a letter, certainly. I was reading an article last night in the New Yorker about Ken Burns, the great documentarian. And I guess in his office in New Hampshire, he has this big neon sign that says, "It's complicated." And that's kind of what I thought about this. It's complicated. It's not just cut and dry and easy. There's actually a lot of moving parts as to why, at some point, this is going to have to be looked at. By the way, anybody who has a solar array today, through January of 23, I understand, are all going to be grandfathered in. Currently, I believe it's 20 years. So they're going to be getting a retail price for the electricity that they're sending back to the grid. So the people that currently have solar, like yourself, are not going to be damaged, but it could quell some of the people that are going to get solar in the future if they're getting a wholesale price after so many years. And those are some of the things that would change. So that's as much as I got at this point. It's complicated. Councilmember Beck.
I'll just say a couple things to make it a little more complicated too. And just about the EV, because I drive 2 EVs, is that I understand I'm not paying gas tax, and I would be willing to pay a higher registration fee once a year if I have an EV to help pay for roads. So I don't think that's unrealistic. We are paying for the grid. I have solar. People that do have solar pay into the grid. There are minimum fees. But we also don't put wear and tear on the grid. The electricity, when it's true that in a perfect world, you would have as many solar power or solar panels on your house that you need. But when the sun is shining brightly and you are not consuming it, it goes out to your neighbors. It's, you're not just going to use it all during the day, and then hopefully, eventually we'll have battery backup when batteries get a little cheaper and won't have to pull from the grid at all. But here's just one other little data point is that, Florida Power and Light gave $4.7 million in the last election to Florida legislators alone, and they composed the legislation. And it's supposed to be a free market. And when solar, and Councilmember Hamilton said maybe we're, heading this off in this state before it gets to what other states are dealing with. we're not even 1% of the market solar customers. And so there's not an impact. And studies have shown that, there are different experts that recommend when you get at a higher saturation, you can look at it, maybe 10%. But I mean, even if they grandfather in people for a couple of years, it's those future customers that will be greatly impacted. And what it means is they're paying more for their energy. They have less money to spend in our community. They have less money for their families. And it all goes to multi-billion-dollar corporations that spend $4.7 million so that the laws are written so they can maintain a monopoly. It's a free market. People look up at this sun, this solar energy, and these big, electric companies want to capitalize it all. And I'm just, saying, and when you generate more power than you're using, and it goes right out to your immediate neighbors, yes, Duke or someone might be paying me some money, but what they charge my neighbor for that, electrons that go in there, is more than what they're paying me. So they get to charge for something they didn't even create. Charge more than what they pay me. So they're making money. I'm just saying.
That was not my understanding. You're getting paid the same retail rate that they're charging people. And that was one of the issues.
Well.
And it's more than a couple of years grandfathering 20. So.
Okay, well, I'm
But
happy
I
that
think
you guys are okay with the
support that
letter.
everybody's fine with the letter. So I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. All right, closing comments. I'll start with Councilmember Bunker and move to my right.
Okay. Nothing
Sorry.
for Mr. Jennings?
Anything, Mr. Jennings? I didn't think you had anything tonight. Mr. Kohler?
No.
Did a great job. Congratulations as a pitch hitter.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Marvelous. Councilmember Bunker?
All right, well, I thought that perhaps this would be discussed tonight, but my understanding is that 3 of Scientology parishioners are going to be renovating some of the properties they've purchased on Cleveland Street. You can go to Cleveland Street Alliance, I believe, to take a look at the plans for it, and it looks good. I would say that this is the bare minimum of what should be expected. Somebody buys a property, fixes it up, and puts a business in it to generate profit for them and for us. That's it. I don't want to see us going hip hip hooray, because it's clear that this has been orchestrated now since 2017 to put us in a position where we decide to work with Scientology and partner with them. And now that, for several years now, Miscavige has said, I don't know, I have nothing to do with all these properties. But he was able to wave his hand and make this progress start. So I think we need to just acknowledge that. Also, it was my second visit to Morton Plant that last week. So again, thanks to all the doctors and nurses and technicians, and I'm going to be a better patient now. I won't be back there for a while. And thank you all.
Councilmember Beckman.
Well, along those lines, I have some other good news about downtown area. I spoke to the landlord who has those properties on North Fort Harrison. He said they're going to get cleaned up starting tomorrow and next week. So at least, the windows will be clean and uniform, I guess, so that's good. I drive through the beach every day, and spring break is here, so be aware with traffic. The roads to the beach are filling up. I had a couple of people reach out to me, and they want to look at Coronado and the lighting on Coronado for people crossing, especially with a number of construction projects going on. And so that might be something we want to look at, is get some better lighting for the crosswalks. Along those lines, thank you for all the continued citizen engagement, the comments about Drew Street, the CDB appointments, the issues with the trash near the East Gateway, I'm told, are being worked on, so that's great. I had a resident who called and suggested that we have a more relaxed food truck policy, thinking that they were downtown and meeting with someone who works at one of the county buildings, and they were just struck that there wasn't a lot of places to go in just for a grab-and-go kind of deli thing, and suggested maybe we have a looser food truck policy downtown, maybe at the old City Hall lot. I know the Parks and Rec brought that in a couple of days a week. And then finally, residents who are signed up to vote by mail should have received their ballot by now. If not, you should contact the Pinellas County Supervisor of Elections. You have until March 5th to request a mail ballot, and I would encourage you to do that. You can go to votepinellas.com to check your registration and to request a mail ballot and to find out where your polling location is, because a number of those polling locations have been consolidated for this election. And there have been 3 candidate forums so far, so I would encourage you to Google them up and watch them. Also, read the candidate profiles that Tracy McManus published in the Tampa Bay Times. They'll help inform you, and just want you to be an informed voter and vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Albritton.
Well, before I came to the council meeting tonight, I attended a funeral for Wally Lee. He was a longtime manager of the Clearwater Beach Hotel, probably 33 years there as manager. He was a beloved guy that many people that moved into Clearwater that stayed at the Clearwater Beach Hotel knew him. He was very familiar with people that came back and people that moved here. So it was sad to see him go, and he'll be missed in this community.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Lee was definitely an icon of the hospitality industry here in Clearwater, and his legacy will live on. There's a lot of people learned a lot of things from him, and he is sadly no longer with us, but he will not be forgotten, I guarantee it. 2 other things. Mark, I agree with you. Fixing up a building to make it look nice is wonderful. But I'll be more excited when I know I see a contract, or I know exactly what tenant is going in that building. What is the goods or services that are going to be available for purchase to the general public in that building. That's when I'll be much more excited. And as we all noticed tonight, we had a sign in our audience. I don't know if I don't know if we have a rule against that kind of thing, but if that's okay, if everybody's okay with that, I fully suspect on our next council meeting, we're going to have 6 or 8 or 10 of those signs out here. Everybody's going to have one in front of their seat or something, and I'm not sure that's good either. So I don't know if that's a discussion we need to have from a legal perspective as far as making a new a council rule or whatever for the future, but until we can enact something, after seeing that tonight, I would suspect at our next meeting you're going to see more than just one sign.
Well, we actually do have a rule. Mr. Kohler, you want to expand on that?
It's under the rules of conduct. I believe it's signs are prohibited, but it's really of graphic representations. I don't think it's anything specific as to a campaign sign or anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not saying it's not allowed by our rules, but it's something that has never happened before. But if that is allowable, I would suspect at our next meeting there will be more than one candidate that will want their sign strategically placed in the audience. So if everybody's okay with that.
Anything
okay.
else?
Huh?
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. I want to thank our staff. We had the Cleveland Street Blues on Cleveland, and it was dynamite. Had a lot of attendees, and the staff always does a great job. I want to congratulate the Turner Brandon American Legion. They had a celebration for the 4 chaplains, and the 4 chaplains were chaplains on a troop transport in 1943 going across the Atlantic, and it was sunk by a U-boat. There were not enough life jackets on the ship, and those 4 chaplains gave up their life jackets and their lives, and it is something that is celebrated every year, and
Father Bob Zwick was honored as well, and he's done a lot for our veterans in the city of Clearwater, so I just wanted to recognize that. The Vice Mayor and I had a dynamite trip up to Tallahassee, got to talk to all of our representatives about our agenda, including the Speaker of the House, and it looks like I shouldn't say it, knock on wood, but it looks like we're probably going to be getting a sizable amount of money for Imagine Clearwater, which will be welcomed. I want to send out our condolences to the Bieber family. The Vice Mayor and Councilmember Albrecht and myself attended the funeral. And Ben and Daniel Bieber are family to this city and our police department, and it is just a terrible tragedy, and they will continue to be in our prayers as they have lost their sister to gun violence. I want to thank Judge James Pierce. They had the Black and Gold Ball, which is for scholarships for students in North Greenwood. It was a great event that my wife and I got to attend. I also want to thank Sophia Rezmiski for the Ride for Allie for pediatric cancer. She lost her best friend at the age of 13, and the Vice Mayor and the Palm Pavilion hosted that. She rode 16 miles, raised a lot of money coming from Tarpon Springs down to Clearwater Beach, and raised awareness for pediatric cancer, which is just awful. Almost all of us got to go to the Azure ribbon cutting, which is a affordable housing project that's just been added to our inventory, and it's dynamite. We look forward to more like it. We have the Elite Invitational Softball Tournament this weekend at Eddie C. Moore. Come out and check it out. ESPN's following it. It is really a great tournament. And then finally, I want to thank all the candidates that are running. It is a thankless, arduous process. And we had a forum on Tuesday and Wednesday night, and Al Rochelle, a longtime member of Bay News 9, did a marvelous job of hosting that. And so congratulations to all. The finish line is in sight. It doesn't matter what you're running for when the end is near. It's kind of good feeling. So thank you all for tuning in tonight. We appreciate it. We are adjourned. God bless.